A man and his cat are enjoying a delicious breakfast together. But little do either of them realize that this meal is about to taste absolutely paranormal. Whatever that means. And then we take a look at the story of a woman driving home one night when she finds herself in a terrible car accident. A car accident so bad she actually dies and goes into the afterlife. But what she sees there is an absolutely bizarre version of life after death. There is a tunnel of light, sure, but waiting for her on the other side in a massive church is God's greatest foe. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio.
I'm freaked out. Actually, I'm a lot freaked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so let's get started right away. First off, riding in on his mighty steed. Everyone get ready to bow, curtsy, or take a knee for our newest Patreon supporter, Sir Dude. Woohoo, yeah, wee, haha, yay, my liege. Woohoo, he's riding on in with a big old white horse, knocking a bunch of stuff over. Whoa, it's okay, you're paying for it, right? You're supporting the Patreon, you can knock over whatever you want. Knocks over a bunch of old bases. Sir Dude is the newest member of our Patreon, and that is why he is going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially, I totally understand. I really do. If you guys, we got the merch store, we got the Patreon, we got all that stuff. But if you guys can't do it, it's totally understandable. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Sir Dude, dismount from that horse. He looks hungry. We'll give him some oats while I toss you the keys to the Dead Rabbit Dune Buggy. Everyone climb on board while I toss you the keys to the Dead Rabbit Dune Buggy. Everyone climb on board this dirt-covered vehicle. As Sir Dude fires it up, we're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Why don't you go ahead and drive us on down? Sir Dude, drive us on down to Mexico. Kicking up dust in the Dead Rabbit Dune Buggy. Kind of like this vehicle. We don't use it enough. I like getting dirt in my eyes. It's my secret fetish. Actually, now that I think about it, there probably is, I always say this, if you can think of something, it's somebody's fetish. You're like, Jason, does this have anything to do with the first story, or are you getting off topic again? There probably is a website out there where people get stuff thrown in their eyes. That's insane if you think about it. And I'm sure you start off small, right? Someone's like, well, I really have a fetish for glass flying 60 miles an hour into my eyeballs, but I don't know if I'm there yet. So I'm just going to pay an OnlyFans model to flick dirt into my eyes. She can come over and your house is covered in dirt and dust. She comes over to your house and there's a particular type of sand that you like. You're like, I'm not one of those gravel freaks. I'm not one of those weirdos. I like the fine sand. I like it coming from a New Mexico desert. And you pay this OnlyFans model to come over. I don't know if they do house visits or whatever, but anyways, they come over and you're sitting there and they're just flicking flakes of sand into your eyes. And you're like, oh yeah, I feel like Mad Max. There's other ways to feel like Mad Max, work out and get a cool looking car, but he took away this fetish man that I just made up. Listen, I'm sure I'm making it up, but I am sure out there in the world, there is people who want to get stuff in their eyes. They get pleasure from that. Isn't that bizarre? That is so weird. Sir Dude's jumping out of the Dune Buggy. He's like, nope, I don't know where this episode's going. And I'm all, ooh la la! Dirt is sandblasting me. You're wearing goggles. Everyone's wearing goggles but me. I'm just my eyes wide open and OnlyFans models driving the Dune Buggy now. Anyways. I actually am going to look. I'll probably deeply regret it, but I'm going to look to see if I can find a support group of people who love getting stuff in their eyes. We're headed out to Mexico. Sir Dude drove us all the way out here. First off, shout out to Last 747. They've been sending over stories pretty consistently. Really, really appreciate it. A lot of great stuff coming from you. Keep it up. Last 747 sent this over to me. It's April 17th, 2024. Very recent story comparatively. We're in Mexico, and we're about to meet this young man. We're going to call him Lucas. We don't have his exact name. He's sitting there on this fateful morning eating a bowl of cereal while his cat, we will name Milo, Lucas is sitting there at his kitchen table enjoying a delicious bowl of cereal. His cat, who we will call Milo, is walking around. Kind of walking around the floor, hoping he'll spill a little milk. Yum, 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 yum. He's going to eat it up. Milo wants that milk. All cats like milk. It gives them diarrhea, but that doesn't mean that they don't like it. I eat Taco Bell. It gives me diarrhea. It doesn't mean I'm not going to eat Taco Bell ever again. Milo really wants the milk. Lucas is eating his cereal. And Lucas puts his spoon down, is fiddling around with his phone. Clickety, click, 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 click. Send. Puts his phone down, goes to grab his spoon. His spoon is missing. He's like, huh? Well, where to put my spoon? I kind of need it to eat cereal. Very famously not a finger food. He's looking around. Did I put it underneath my bowl? No. Is it in the milk? No. Huh. And, then you think, well, probably knocked it off the table. Probably knocked the spoon off the table. And he goes, okay, I'll look down. So he looks down, and Milo is kind of walking around by his feet, hoping to get some milk that drops out of this dude's bowl. Lucas looks down, and he sees Milo again kind of hanging out by his feet, looking for some delicious droplets of milk. And that's when Lucas does see his spoon. He sees his spoon embedded into Milo's side. Meow, Milo says. Lucas is like, what? Lucas is looking at his cat. He's like, Milo, what? Huh? What in the world? He clearly sees the spoon is halfway sticking out of the cat. So Lucas picks the cat up and he goes, I could tell Milo he wasn't in any sort of pain. He didn't seem distressed or worried. I was the one freaking out because I can't figure out what's going on. I pick up Milo and I grab the spoon and I start to pull it. And it is clearly embedded inside this cat. But how? It is not sharp. And if it was sharp, this cat would be freaking out. He's kind of a crybaby, honestly. He grabs onto the spoon and he begins to pull it very gently. But he begins to pull it. In an instant, Lucas is no longer holding his cat. So now he's not only missing his spoon, he's missing his cat. Now, I will stop this story to say right now, when the last 747 sent this over to me, they said, I don't believe this story at all, by the way. They go, I think this story is 100% made up. I disagree. We're not done with the story, but I'm stopping it here because if you thought that part was nuts, strap in, guys. You're like a spoon appearing in the side of a cat? That's a little implausible, even for Dead Rabbit Radio. I disagree with the last 747. I think this story actually is possible, and I'll explain why. But it's going to get weird. That was just the beginning. Lucas is holding his cat. His cat has a spoon stuck in his side. Poor Milo. It's about to get much, much worse for Milo, by the way, but Lucas grabs the spoon, is trying to pull it out, and then Milo vanishes. Lucas is just standing there holding nothing. When all of a sudden, klingly cling, cling, cling. Lucas hears the sound of a spoon hitting the floor. It's that unmistakable sound. We've all dropped silverware more than once in our life. It's the sound of a utensil hitting the ground. He goes, I hear a metal spoon hit the ground. I look down, and there is the spoon. The spoon's on the floor. It fell from above. So then I look up. Milo is now stuck in the ceiling. Only half of Milo is visible at this point. He's stuck in the ceiling, and he's spinning around as he's halfway in, halfway out the ceiling, and he's meowing, which is kind of which would be expected, right? You're like, and then I phased through the floor, but I didn't say a word. I accepted my fate silently. Milo is stuck. You're like, Jason, whoa, wait a second. Let me absorb that visual. This cat is halfway stuck in a ceiling of a house, spinning around, meowing, being a big crybaby about the whole thing. You know? Oh, we can all phase through solid objects once in our life and not make a big deal about it. And that's what he's doing. He's actually floating up. So he's stuck on the ceiling, but Lucas is watching him beginning to phase even more and more through the ceiling, spinning and meowing. So Lucas does the appropriate thing, what I think we all would do. He runs upstairs. Because he goes, oh, okay, you know, if my cat is phasing through this concrete ceiling and I have a second story on my house, I'm going to go up there and I'll see him coming out the floor. Maybe I'll be able to grab him or something like that. Maybe I'll be able to save him. Maybe I'll be able to finish eating my cereal at some point. I'm just so hungry this morning. So he runs upstairs and he gets there, and sure enough, he sees this little cat ear start to appear. Starts to phase through the floor, and the cat ear spinning around. And then the whole head of Milo appears out of the floor, and he's like phasing through it, almost as if he's floating through the concrete floor as if it was a cloud, and more of him is becoming visible, but he just keeps spinning, and eventually he totally emerges from the floor. Lucas is just watching this. He's like, I don't know if I want to touch that thing. Whatever he has might be contagious. Milo, I love you, buddy, but... And Milo is now spinning in the air. He's like floating now in the middle of this room, and he's floating up towards the ceiling of this room. And Lucas is watching this and being like, oh, I don't know. I should save my cat. But on the other hand, like, this could be super dangerous. He's like, let me ponder the pros and cons as the cat's slowly floating past him. And he doesn't have a third story on his house. The ceiling to this room leads to outside. And he just stands there, because what are you going to do? Like, I think I probably would have gotten a broom and started hitting it and trying to, like, make it not spin. But again, you would wonder, like, well, what if I ruined my new broom? Oh, come on, Milo, I just bought that broom, Milo. Don't make me sacrifice it. Would you touch it? Like, what would happen? Maybe it would stop, maybe you would have your cat back. Or maybe you would start spinning. The cat is spinning, Milo is spinning in the air. And he's reaching the ceiling, and Lucas is like, oh, this isn't going to be good. Lucas walks out onto the porch just as Milo begins to phase through the ceiling and the roof of his house. He's standing out on the balcony. Lucas runs out to the balcony as Milo begins to phase through the ceiling and roof of this house. He's standing out on the balcony, and sure enough, he sees Milo slowly start to appear, slowly start to phase through the roof of his house, spinning around, and then, boop! He pops free of the house and begins to slowly spin his way up into the sky until he became nothing but a tiny black dot. He did post this online. Lucas wrote, quote, this happened an hour ago. He posted this back on April 27th. He goes, this happened an hour ago and he still hasn't come back. Unquote. Lucas said he doesn't really believe in the paranormal. He considered this more of a glitch in reality. Now, what's interesting is, So this was posted online. Lucas went by the name Long Manufacturer 990. And one of the ways that I use, maybe it's not foolproof, but when I'm able to grab a post where someone has a posting history, some websites like the X-Board, it's anonymous, so I never know what they've written before or after a particular post. But with Reddit, I can look through their posting history, and it can kind of guide us over whether or not this person is constantly making up fanciful stories, constantly talking about their pets spinning away. And you can create a picture, not always a perfect picture, but you can go, sure, someone could just one day decide to wake up and write a silly story online. He did post this. Lucas posted this in several subreddits, and it got deleted from all of them. Glitch in the Matrix, I think, was the first one. They said, no, it's too weird. Retconned, which is like a personal version of the Mandela Effect, it got kicked off that. The Paranormal subreddit, the Paranormal Encounters subreddit, Ghosts. The only subreddit it's currently up on is the Stories subreddit. And you go, well, Jason, doesn't that lean towards the last 747's theory that it was fake all along? Well, again, what's interesting about this is I think he posted it there. This is my feeling, because that's the only place that he could. That's the only place they want to delete it, a place where stuff there you can write whatever. Because when I look through his posting history, most of his posts are asking relationship questions about his girlfriend. His girlfriend, who is planning on stealing a bunch of money from the Mexican government, which I'm just going to give a little bit of advice to you. You might want to take that post down. He's like, my girlfriend really wants a job to work for the Mexican government, but she says what she's going to do is she's just going to steal as much money as she can. She's like, wants to get into politics or something. I was like, bro, do not post that type of stuff online. Talk about your spinning cat, sure. And then I'm not trying to... Here's the thing. This is what I find so interesting about it. I'm not trying to make fun of this guy, but I find this very fascinating. You write a story about your cat spinning away. You write a story about your girlfriend who, in a casual conversation, said if she wanted to, she could do OnlyFans, or if she had to, she could do OnlyFans, but she doesn't want to, she'd be too embarrassed. He's like, hey guys, is it normal that your girlfriend wants to do OnlyFans? People were like, what? No, that's like a huge red flag, bro. And then he's like, well, she's really trying to make her money by not OnlyFans, but by breaking into the Mexican political scene and ripping them off. People are like, what are you talking about? And then he has this post about how his girlfriend's never had an orgasm. And the next post is about how much he likes Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So listen, I don't think this guy is making this up. I think he is telling us a bunch of stuff about his life that he probably shouldn't, right? It's probably nobody's business. Listen, I'm not going to say I'm 100% on figuring out people's motives, but when someone willingly posts that they can't give their girlfriend an orgasm and they put that out there, even though a lot of guys, that's a thing for a lot of guys, anyone who bears their soul like that, first off, no one's going to make that up. No one is going to lie about that. If anything, you're going to be like, my girlfriend has 100 orgasms a week. In fact, she's having one right now. Right? The fact that someone could be so nakedly honest to the point of inviting insults. And then to go, oh, by the way, my cat spun away. It would be odder to me if he made it up, if there is guile in this post. Because if someone is that blunt and being like, yeah, I can't give my girlfriend orgasms. My girlfriend's never had an orgasm with me. Then whatever the next thing out of their mouth, I'm going to believe. Because they've told me something that most men will never admit. Whatever they say after that, I'm going to be like, oh man, that's 100% true. Because you just told me something I know is true. Crazy, crazy stuff. Sir, dude, let's go ahead and toss you the keys of the world famous carpenter copter. We're going to leave behind Mexico. Why don't you fly us all the way out to a neighborhood in the middle of a rainstorm? Good thing we got windshield wipers on the Carpenter Copter, because it is coming down. Sir Dude's using all of his expertise to make sure we land safely. We're headed out to this neighborhood that's getting hammered by this rainstorm. First off, I got to give a shout out to Sean on the Patreon Discord. He's the one who sent this over to me. Fascinating story. Absolutely loved reading this. Really appreciate it. It's April 15th, 1981, and we're about to meet a woman named Vera. She's 50 years old, she's a divorcee, and she's driving home on this night, this rainy night. She was driving a friend home, dropped them off. She's leaving his place. And when she's coming down the road, there's a series of turns and U-turns and all right turns and all this stuff that she has to do to get back onto this main road. And it's complicated and not particularly the safest thing to do in the best conditions, but in the rainstorm, it's complicating everything, and it's nighttime. She looks both ways, though, and she makes this U-turn. She's preparing to make this right turn when all of a sudden, she doesn't see it, but she feels it. A car slams into her with such force that she begins spinning. begins spinning through the sky. Whee! Everything's spinning this episode. Because the ground is so wet and she's hit with such force, her car begins to spin. It's spinning out of control, and she slams into a lamppost, bounces off of that, and then spins into another lamppost, and her car completely wraps around it. Vera begins to feel herself float into the air. And she hears a voice that she doesn't know who it was. She didn't recognize it. It wasn't her voice, but she hears a voice say, "It's too late." Vera's continuing to float in the air, and she sees an ambulance. She sees a car down there. She sees this commotion. She can't hear anything, but she's seeing this busyness going on in the street below as she's slowly floating up. And the thought she has in her head is, oh, I wonder what's happening down there. She doesn't realize that she's looking down at the remains of her own car, at the remains of her own body. She doesn't realize that she is experiencing a transition from life to death. Up until this moment, she has never heard of a near-death experience. But she's about to have one. She begins flying down this long, large tunnel. And when she gets to the top, she lands. And her feet are now touching the ground. She said she saw something that looked like a football field, and its beauty was stunning. She looks over the landscape, and she is absolutely stunned by the beauty. She says the sky was so bright. It was the bluest sky you could imagine, and the greens. She goes, the greens just popped out against everything. She goes, the trees were greener than they could ever be. The grass was greener. The bushes were greener. It was so lush, so full of life, so beautiful. These trees are kind of lining this area, setting up this perimeter. In front of her, she sees something that she compares to a football field that is partially made up from this sandstone-colored material. And she sees these pebbles and these little tiny rocks and sparkling little pieces of earth kind of making up this beautiful pattern, this beautiful area. And she's thinking to herself, what am I doing here? Where am I? I've been here before, she says to herself. When she was a little girl, Vera used to play at this round field. Not a football field. It was much smaller and a different shape, but it was this round field that had white sandstone as part of the decoration. So she begins to think that she is a little girl again. She's still trying to figure out what all of this is, what's going on. I think at this point she probably figures that she's not going to make it home. At this point it may have occurred to her that she is actually dead, or maybe not. In this part she may just think, oh, I'm a little girl. I remember this place. A place she doesn't remember, though. She sees off in the distance this building. And she said it didn't have a steeple on it, but I knew it was a church. I could tell from the distance, I could just tell there was something about it that told me it was a church. But here's the thing, Vera realizes. I don't know where I'm at. I have no idea what's going on. That's the only building visible. I should go there. I should head over there. You know what's really interesting is because, again, this story takes place in 1981. I think nowadays you would be hard-pressed to find someone who's never heard of a near-death experience. But back in 91, this type of stuff was relegated to churches and paranormal books. And I'm sure a lot of churches, and a lot of churches may not have covered it. A lot of these stories were relegated to paranormal books and magazines. It was not as widespread as this information is today. So you wonder, what would a near-death experience be like for someone who didn't know what was happening? A lot of times people, when they're flying through the tunnel, they go, oh, I'm dead. This is the tunnel of light I've heard about. But with Vera, she may or may not have even thought that she's dead at this point. She may just not know where she is and what is going on. And in that case, I think in either case, she would probably walk towards the building. It's the only building around. There must be something in there or someone in there that can help me. She starts walking towards the building. She gets to the building and she sees that this church has these huge doors that are slightly ajar. And there's 7 steps leading up to them. She walks up these 7 steps. She walks in through these massive church doors and inside. And that's when she gets the first feeling that something is, I don't want to use the word not right. From a distance, Vera saw it was a church. She gets up closer. She sees it's a church. It doesn't have a steeple. That throws her off. But she feels it's a church. And what are churches but places of belonging? Even for people who aren't a member of that particular religion. If there's a big rainstorm and there's a church service going on, you're welcome. And I think that applies for most religions, if not all of them. But when she walked through those doors, she wasn't in a church. She said it was more like a monastery. And those are more closed off, aren't they? That's for a particular type of worshiper, because it's for a more rigorous type of worship. She goes, I walked in and it immediately struck me that it was less like a church and more like a monastery. However, it did still have some of the decorative touches of a traditional church. She said there was a long red carpet leading from the doorway towards the front of the church. Where a pulpit would normally be, there was just a table. And Vera begins walking down this long red carpet, and she sees on each side of the carpet are pews. And sitting in these pews, there are people wearing black robes. These black robes had hoods that completely covered up their faces, and they just sat there looking straight ahead. This is the first time Vera becomes frightened. This is the first time she realizes that something bad might be happening. As she's walking down this red carpet, she keeps looking from side to side, seeing if she can catch a glimpse of one of their faces, to see who was sitting in these pews. And while she can never get a look at their face, she did see that the inside of the hood, of this black hood, was red. It was a red cloth. There was no sound in this monastery/church. There was no sound except for the sound of Vera's own footsteps as she continues to walk down this long red carpet to reach the front of the church. There's 3 steps, and that leads up to a table that's placed where the pulpit would normally be in a church, right dead center. She climbs the 3 steps and she sees this table, an altar, really, as she's gotten a better look at it now. There are 6 silver goblets and a big silver jug sitting there on this altar. And Vera is looking at him like, what? What is this for? And right when she has that thought, a door to the right opens up, and out walks the devil. She doesn't describe the devil. She doesn't describe him as having the red face and the horns and the tail. When you meet the devil, you know who you are talking with. There is no doubt in your mind whether he chooses one form or another or is just appearing as a human. There's no doubt in your mind who you're talking to. None. She doesn't describe what the devil looks like. I assume that's what we're talking about here. She sees him, whatever form he's in, probably just a person. Probably just a normal looking guy, but you just know who you're talking to in those situations. Or maybe he did have a pitchfork, right? Who knows? Maybe he had a pitchfork. Maybe he had red skin. I don't know. But anyways, the devil walks out, and he walks up to the altar, looks Vera right in the eye, and says, "Pick a goblet." What are you going to do? What are you going to do, right? You don't want to deal with this maniac. There's all these other guys behind you, this goon squad sitting in the pews, plus you're dead. There's not many places you can go. Fine. Vera picks a goblet, and she's holding it out. She's holding it out to the devil. The devil reaches over, grabs the big silver jug, and begins to pour into the goblet Vera is holding fire and flame. Is just pouring out of this big jug. Vera freaks out. She screams, she drops the goblet, and she takes off running. She runs through the monastery, out the big church doors. She doesn't know where she's going. She just knows where she doesn't want to be. She runs and she runs and she runs, and she sees this big stone fence off in the distance, and she's running towards it. Just as she's about to get there, the gates of this stone fence open up, and she runs through the gates. She's running and running. She sees an iron gate off in the distance. Running. Just as she gets close, the gate opens up. She runs through the gate. She's running and running. It's getting warmer and warmer and brighter. Then bam! Vera's laying in a hospital bed. This This is a very unique type of near-death experience. We've covered them on our show. Again, we always look for the craziest stuff to cover. We did an episode on negative near-death experiences. We've talked a little bit about positive near-death experiences. You hear about those way more often, but a mixture of the two is actually incredibly rare. Having a near-death experience that is both positive and negative rarely happens. Among a phenomenon, near-death experiences that are already rare in and of themselves, a positive and negative near-death experience in one is quite unique. It's interesting because Vera, she has survived, and she talked about this. She didn't know what a near-death experience was when she was having one. She said she kind of believes she's figured out what that experience was. She says that if you took all the good in my life and all the bad in my life, it actually was equal. And that's not how it should be. You should have more good in your life than bad. She goes, I believe that if I had stayed and drank the goblet of fire and flame, it would have burned off some of the bad. I would have suffered, sure. It would have been horrible, and it would have tormented me, and it would have been physically painful. It would have scorched my soul. But I would do that to basically make penance for some of the bad stuff I did. So it would make the balance of good versus evil, or good versus bad, more likely, not true evil, but good versus bad, more good, less bad, because you basically pay the price, the pain, for the bad stuff you did. It's interesting. This was talked about in a study written by Harvey J. Irwin and Barbara A. Bramwell. It was called The Devil in Heaven, Experience with Both Negative Facets, a Near-Death Positive and Negative Facets. I might have typed it out wrong, but anyways, that sounds like a weird title. And Vera believes, that because she ran away from the judgment, she then came back to life and still had to pay in some way. So that was why she had the physical disabilities that resulted from the car accident. She could have just died in the car accident and had her soul balanced out by the flame. But because she didn't, when she came back to Earth, she still had to pay for the bad that she had done, which resulted in these physical disabilities. It's totally fair to have this opinion. Vera's totally okay to have this opinion. I mean, she can think. But at what point then, I do have to extrapolate that out and go, well, then does everyone with a disability, are they paying for something they did in life? It just doesn't shake for me. I think she probably has physical disabilities because she got in a horrific, don't mean to laugh, but because she got in a horrific car accident. Though, it's funny, Vera's opinion is her opinion, obviously, and it's of a very personal event. She went through this car accident, she went to the afterlife, and she came back. I didn't do any of those things. And that's her view on it, that the physical disabilities that she suffers in life are to make up for the sins she committed in the past. And had she stayed and passed away, then the fire and flames would have consumed those sins. I do think it's kind of funny that the devil is the one doing the balancing act here. And that opens up a whole other ball of wax as far as life after death goes and what we think of it. But I don't agree with her view. I know this is her personal story, and this is how she sees it. And I think a lot of you guys would agree with me. My buddy Chris, he's more than buddy, he was family. My cousin Chris, quite a long time ago, he was drinking, and his buddy was drinking, and his buddy started driving, and they were coming along down Madison Avenue out in Citrus Heights, and the driver lost control of the car and slammed into a cement wall that kind of lines Madison Avenue. If you're familiar with the area, you know what I'm talking about. And my cousin Chris ended up being paralyzed from the chest down because of that. And he was probably maybe 23, 24 when this happened. We were all grateful that he survived, of course, but you know what I mean? And it's funny because, for one, I don't think that he is paralyzed. Well, he's passed away now, unfortunately. He did live for another, God, like 20 years after that. Very fulfilling life. Very rich and fulfilling life. He's a great guy. But I don't now, nor have I ever felt that he was being punished for his past wrongs. The reason why he was paralyzed from the chest down. I mean, yes, drinking and driving, it's a terrible thing. The driver, who obviously felt incredibly bad about it, walked away with a small cut. But that's life sometimes. That's life. I don't think it's punishment. I've known people who've gone through horrible things. I know a lot of you guys have gone through horrible things. I don't think you're being punished. If you have a disability or became disabled at some point or were born with it or car accident or whatever, sawmill accident and you're chopped in half, now you're your own best friend. I don't think you're punished. I don't think that's a punishment for wrongs you may have done. Because otherwise, a whole lot of people would be walking around with some pretty serious ailments. But I don't want to take away from what she went through. I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that. And I think a lot of you guys would agree with it. It's very interesting that that was her takeaway. She came back to the world of the living, and she was physically suffering. And she had to either overcome these disabilities or learn to live with them, or a little bit of both. But it's interesting that that's what she took away from that. I actually would agree with the read more that the flame would have purified her, because it seemed to be in such a, it's a monastery. It's a place of penance. So I kind of get the read on that, but coming back to life and having the disabilities, I just kind of disagree with that part. But it's interesting. That's the thing. That's her read. That was her feeling on the whole thing. But this is a very rare near-death experience, because they are usually either all positive or all negative. This one's a little bit of both, and she took off running and came back alive. I do have to say, and again, Sean, thanks for sending this over, and the last 747, thanks for sending over the first story. This show would be very difficult to do without all of your guys' help. As I was researching this, I found the name of a researcher named Maurice Rawlings, which I don't think I'm familiar with. He apparently specializes or did a lot of deep research into negative near-death experiences. So I'm going to be looking into this guy's writings because I find that so fascinating. We always hear about the good near-death experiences. You're like, yes, Jason, for a reason, because death is terrifying. We don't want to think about the negative stuff. Well, I'm going to dig into that. I'm going to dig into Maurice Rawlings' works and see if I can come up with any other creepy stories that make you even more terrified of leaving behind the mortal world we all inhabit. Very, very interesting stuff. I do have to make a quick note. I am going to be taking a 2-day break. This will be the last episode for this week. And we will resume episodes on Sunday, which, they come out Monday morning. But I just got to take care of some stuff. Some stuff came up, and I have to take care of some stuff. You're like, oh, Jason, come on. You never miss the show unless you're like trapped in an airport or deathly ill or something like that. What's going on? I just got to take care of some stuff. Let's put it that way. But we will be back. I'm going to take the next 2 days off. We will be back our normal schedule starting next week again. And I can't wait to do it. I can't wait to have more stories that'll terrify you to the bone or possibly make you sick to your stomach or a little bit of both. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day. I'm glad you listened to it today.